Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're having a good weekend. I want to talk a little bit about Anthony Joshua because, as we know, he has the Ngannou fight coming up. And to be honest with you, I kind of like what I'm hearing from Joshua. He seems to have turned a corner. Now, I could be wrong about this, but judging by interviews, which essentially is all we've got to go on if we don't have any sort of insight into training, what's happening with the training and so on, I just like his attitude because if you go back a couple of years or maybe a little bit less, certainly after the two Usyk defeats, he was all over the place mentally. His psychology it seemed shot to bits. He seemed to be really second guessing himself. He seemed to have lost his identity really as a person, never mind a fighter. And, he hooked up with Derek James and they did some good technical stuff. But I don't know, is this down to Ben Davison or is this just a sort of the passing of time somehow brings a kind of soothing cure, if you like, to certain ailments? And it seems that Joshua is now accepting that he's not the best heavyweight in the world, whereas before he wanted to be. And he said, I mean, this really sticks in the mind to me. You may have heard him say this. He said, "I am the top heavyweight in the UK," which is obviously excludes Tyson Fury. He says, "I'm not really too concerned about the world. I'm trying to conquer where I live." Now, I really like that quote because, number one, again, he sort of accepts, okay, I may not be the best in the world. I did my best, but, an acceptance of reality is a big step towards feeling inner contentedness. And also being able to concentrate on what you are good at. Because they say there's levels to this game. And let's be honest. Look, Joshua, regardless of how he did it, which wasn't an attractive fight, but he reversed the Andy Ruiz defeat. He won on points. They really should have had a third fight, a settler, but maybe they will. You never know in the future. And then against Usyk, he got beaten comprehensively, but he went 24 rounds with a guy that you might call a generational talent. So there's no real shame in that. You know what I mean? He's not the best heavyweight of his era, I don't think, but he is very, very good. And for him to say the second thing, of course, is he's saying to Tyson Fury, "You're not the best. You got the belt, but I'm the best. And if you don't think I am, come and get me." Which he's been saying for donkey's years. And anyway, I like this because it does show a sort of it shows, like I say, it's a turning of the corner, kind of psychologically. And I wonder how much of this has got to do with Ben Davison, who is a very cerebral, he analyses everything down to the sort of minutiae of it all. And Joshua is like that because Joshua constantly wants to absorb information, wants to absorb, different angles, different permutations of how a fight will go. Well, that's Ben Davison's speciality. Also, I think the fact that Davison is like that and has praised Joshua and probably behind closed doors, this is only a guess, is probably bringing him back to what he does well and then adding to it, whereas other trainers have perhaps tried to sort of deconstruct Joshua entirely, in terms of style, but not really concentrated on what's going on between the ears. So confidence-wise, Joshua is moving up. And then, of course, if you add together the fact that, he knocked out Helenius, which wasn't a surprise, but a lot of people, myself included, were surprised about how easily he dealt with Wallin. And that is a confidence builder in itself, because Otto Wallin gave, Tyson Fury a lot of problems, sliced his eye open very badly and so on. And also Davison worked with Fury. As we know, he was the chief second on for the first Wilder fight, which everyone knows Fury really won. So I think it's all coming together for Joshua. And the Ngannou fight, although it should be kind of, if Joshua behaves himself and comes in physically and mentally prepared, this should be a gimme for Joshua. You know what I mean? So I'm quite impressed. I like what I'm hearing from Joshua. I like the attitude. And maybe he's not there yet in terms of confidence, self-esteem as a boxer, identity as a man as well as a fighter. But he's getting there. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think if he really does dominate Ngannou, not necessarily knocks him out, but wins every round, again, that will be another thing. He can turn to Fury and say, well, you had life and death with this guy. I just dominated him. If he stops him, good. And he can stop him. He can wear, as we know, Ngannou is an immensely strong man. He's a very good, excellent combat sportsman. He lacks experience in a boxing ring, of course, especially against that level of opposition. But come on, the guy. If you give the guy an inch, he'll take you a mile. Which is what Fury did. Look what happened to Fury. So if he does beat Ngannou conclusively, then yeah, this is another thing you can say. And Fury, he's busy with Usyk. I'm not convinced he wants the Usyk fight, and I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not even convinced he'll turn up. I think he might cry off sick. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I know people are going to say if he turns up, you said he weren't going to turn up. No, I didn't. I said he might not turn up, okay? Because I just think he's been sort of cornered. He kind of painted himself into a corner with the whole Ngannou thing, and assumed he'd just slap Ngannou around and then he'd be ready to fight Usyk. And he wasn't. He clearly, obviously wasn't. He's a bit busted up and way out of shape physically and mentally, didn't take Ngannou seriously. Now suddenly he's got to go in there with Usyk. It's meant to be on December the 23rd, this thing, but, okay, February, all right. He does seem to be taking the fight seriously, though, because you haven't heard a lot from Fury. He's behind closed doors trying to prepare himself and get ready, which is a great thing. And, if he beats Usyk, that's great. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind who wins. I've got no horse in the race. I do like Usyk better because I think he's conducted his career in a better way. But, I've picked against Fury before and he's proved me wrong. And if he proves me wrong again, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying I necessarily even pick Usyk. I might, as it gets close to the fight and the more becomes revealed, you might, because originally I thought Fury would win on points against Usyk. That was, for a long time, that was my thought. But you never know. He might, he might be on it again. I don't think he's a shot fighter. I think a lot of people said Fury's finished. I don't buy that at all. And likewise, I never ever bought into the idea that Joshua was finished. I always thought he needed to sort his head out, which seems to be what he's done, or he is doing. He's got a little way to go, but, with any era of boxing, you always get people who are, undefeated, and then they look unbeatable, then they lose, and then they lose again, and they're written off because of a couple of defeats. And this is all nonsense. You cannot judge people historically until their career is over. Once their career is over, then you can look back and say, okay, yeah, he was better than he thought. Lennox Lewis, at the time, people don't realise this because the younger people don't realise this. Lennox Lewis was dismissed as a kind of a paper champion for a long while. And then, when he beat Holyfield, Holyfield was old, and then he went on a streak. And, then he had life and death with Vitaly Klitschko. Then he retired. It's only afterwards people look back and say, Lennox Lewis was a really good champion, a really good heavyweight. He got knocked out twice, but he reversed those defeats. Again, it's a shame he didn't have the third fight. But, and this happens. This happens frequently. In fact, it happens with most fighters. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes everyone thinks this is a great, great fighter. And then you look back and you think, actually, weren't that great. Lost ducked some people, lost some fights that he shouldn't have done, blah, blah, blah. But you can only judge someone when the dust has settled. You know what I mean? And I think when all is said and done, Anthony Joshua, who was completely written off after his 3 defeats, people will look back and say, actually, this guy was pretty damn good. This guy really had a good resume. And, I am a big AJ fan. I think he's a very good fighter. I don't think he's necessarily the best of his era. But I like the way he goes about his work. I like the fact he doesn't duck anyone. And, so... yeah, you tell me what you think about Joshua. Where is he mentally, physically? What do you think about the Ngannou fight? Do you think he can become world champion again? Maybe unified champion? Maybe even undisputed? You just never know what's going to happen in boxing. Especially the heavyweights. There's a lot of people, a lot of heavyweights, great heavyweights who've been beaten, and a lot of upsets that have happened. Tell me what you think. Leave your comments below. And, of course, subscribe to the channel if you knew. If you could do that, that would be a big deal. And hit the like button. Takes a second. And I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Thanks for your time, as always. I'll catch you later. And bye for now.